Hi, and welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents. This is a special backer-curated episode. Our very generous and backer, who we're very grateful to, Christian Bickley, liked our episode on Outlaws of the Water Margin so much, wanted another, and so here we are talking about Continuum, the role-playing game about time travel that actually purports to simulate time travel and time travel combat. A role-playing game I have been aware of for quite some time. I've owned a copy for a while. It has a certain reputation in certain RPG circles as being, well, notoriously unplayable. And
ouch! Just don't hold back, Ross. Say what you really feel.
It's a beautiful book. It is well written. I certainly was not bored by reading it, and but my personal experience is that I found it used at my local game store years ago, and I bought a copy, and I was like, hey guys, look, it's a time travel role-playing game. I have several friends who really like time travel stories. They like Doctor Who, they like Back to the Future. One of them, Aaron, borrowed the book and said, I want to run that. And he's like, great, run it. I'll play it. I don't want to run it. Cause I had skimmed the book enough to know, like, nope, I couldn't run that. And Aaron gave me the book back and said, nope, I can't do it. And then my other friend, Thad, who's also interested in time travel, was like, let me take a crack at that. And he gave it back to me, saying, nope, can't do it. Then recently, a third, and so for years, it's been on my shelves as the book that is unplayable. And then recently, another of my friends, Baz.
This is your music podcast co-host, right?
No, Baz is a streamer. He helps Caleb do the Delta Green Twitch stream. He also that you're thinking of Burke. A lot of people mix up Baz and Burke, but Baz showed me a photo of Continuum and was like, "Hey, look, I had a copy in my library." And I was like, "Oh man, that's awesome!" It's like, Thad and Aaron couldn't run it.
You should read the little script you shared with me, which was, where he's like, both of them are more analytical people than me. Yep. I think this game requires an abstract mind.
Yeah, that's literally what he said to me on Discord. He's like, I think I can run this. I think this game requires an abstract mind. And I was like, well, hell, I'll play through it. And so that was like at 2:00. At 4:00, I get a message. I was wrong. This game requires someone to be a goddamn savant to run/play. Things made sense mostly until I started reading Time Combat. Jesus Christ, someone from 1975 can attack one of your time selves while you're fighting that person's future self in the present. This game is fucking unplayable. And I had to screenshot that and share it.
And I'm pretty sure there was a group out there that played this extensively because it feels like it's been play tested. It feels like the mechanics and those systems have been run through and polished.
Yes.
I don't think it's unplayable. I think it's really, really badly structured. I think the writing is beautiful. Mm-hmm. It needed an editor. It has an editor credited. I'm not going to name them because I don't want to shame them, but they should have been more on the ball. This is just trying to follow the terminology right up to almost the last 10 or 15 pages. It's still defining new terms. Mm-hmm. This is a book, I think it has a 1-page contents, a half-page index, and no glossary. It's just trying to keep all the concepts in your head, and there are so many of them.
There's a defined terms section, but I'm not sure it's in the table of contents. Let me see if I can find it. Oh yeah, table of contents has 6 entries. So that could be, someone once, yelled at me that every game book should be more like a textbook or a reference book than a novel. Mm-hmm. And having, seen how I use books at the table, I mean, you have to read it. It has to be kind of this Schrodinger cat thing where it's a wave when it needs to be and a particle when it needs to be. Only in this case, it needs to be an entertaining read the first time through, but easily navigable and a clear reference guide every time after that. And that's a hard that's a hard pair of uprights to get the football between. And this book was written in 1999, and it is in many ways a product of its time.
Oh boy, ain't it?
Yeah.
As soon as I saw black text on gray, I'm like, oh shit, we're back in the 90s. We're doing this again. Well, at least the gray background of this box text does not have a pattern to it. That was, what were we thinking when we did those? Were we all just high? I wasn't.
We were high on Quark Express is what we were high on. We were high on the possibility that we could do this, and nobody told us that we shouldn't.
Well, White Wolf did it.
We were so absorbed in realizing that we could that we never stopped to ask if we ought to. That's not quite the Jurassic Park quote, but yeah.
Yeah. I think it's also like the RPG equivalent of nobody was fired for buying IBM like equipment. Like it's like White Wolf was doing it. I'm not going to get fired for doing what White Wolf does. So yeah, back in those halcyon days of the 90s.
Yeah, the 90s. I'm just thinking of those giant, brightly colored weightlifter pants. It was a different time.
But yeah, I mean, there are some virtues to this book. It posits a very interesting setting. There's beautiful art in it, including one of my favorite artists, what's his name? The Planescape guy.
Kaluta?
Let's see here. Interior.
Kaluta did the cover.
You mean Tony DiTerlizzi?
Yes.
DiTerlizzi also, yeah. There's gorgeous art, and parts of it, I feel like this is a constellation of terrific ideas that were not implemented particularly well. And part of that is just due to the time. Game design was not as advanced then as it is now, or maybe people were just far more patient with the idea of a 4-hour session. So how do we want to do this? Because there isn't, our usual deal is what does it do? How does it do it? Who's playing it and why are they playing it that way? How are people playing it and why are they playing it that way? And I do not believe there is a Continuum community of active play.
There's a theoretical community because I have seen a lot of discussion searching for it on the internet. I have seen a lot of people discussing how to run Continuum, how to make it playable. I think we should first start by sort of defining the basic premise, which we've talked about. It is time travel, but not like the broad strokes.
Can I start? Because
oh, please do. Yeah.
All right. So the thing that really floored me about this, the first time I read this, which would be back in the 90s, because I don't remember acquiring this. My copy's signed, so I probably got it at Gen Con sometime in the 90s, but that was long ago, and I've consumed a lot of alcohol and been choked a lot since then. So, but the thing that blew me away is right at the beginning, the guy's like, okay, imagine a time machine, and if you had a time machine and were planning to use it, what is one of the first smart things you could do would be to get to, use your time travel powers to get the best time machine you could, right? Why would you put up with a crappy early time machine that's the equivalent of one of those brick cell phones when you could zoom forward and get, the latest model iPhone that you could find? He's like, so, okay, let's imagine what the perfect time machine would look like. It's like, well, you'd want something you couldn't lose. You'd want something that couldn't be stolen from you, because God knows what people would get up to. It's like, so the best possible time machine would not be a machine at all. It would be a process that you would learn to do in the same way that you learn to read and then never forget how to read. So our time travelers just think it and do it. You don't have to have a TARDIS parked somewhere. You don't have to worry about it breaking down. It is this flawless engine. And I'm like, okay, these guys are thinking in colors. And then, the other thing, and because they're like, we're really thinking through the implications of this, they're like, yeah, time and space are part of the same dimensional continuum. So if you can travel in time, you can also travel in space. And it's actually easier because you don't have paradoxes. And so when you start out as just a little baby time traveler, you can, once per day, you have enough like go juice to travel 1 year in either direction or 1 mile in any direction. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. And I like that, the teleportation thing. You could already do a fabulous game where it's just like people be teleporting. How does that change everything?
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like people be teleporting and also to yesterday. And they also have a pretty elaborate and carefully phrased section on, okay, so this multiple universe theory that you may be familiar with from the Loki TV show, say, where every decision splits off and you get all these cool what ifs, they're like, no, the universe isn't like that. And you're kind of a dick for thinking that you have so much power that every time you decide everything, you've recreated the universe like Jehovah. No, there's one universe. And when you go back and change it, it gets fucked up. And when it's fucked up, guess whose responsibility it is to fix it? Yours.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the central concept and mechanic of Continuum is frag. Agreed?
No question.
Yeah.
Frag is...
And spanning. Spanning is what they call it.
Spanning and frag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what frag is a measure of how much you've knocked the time stream out of true.
Mm-hmm.
And you're expected to fix your frag, but at the same time, you're part of this huge community of time travelers where if you get in way over your head, they'll come back and help you. But they are also expecting you and your future selves to help them fix other instances of frag. So, and another element of Continuum that I should get. Well, do you want me to just stick with what it is now, or should I get into kind of the setting?
I mean, I think the basic thing is you time travel, you span, dealing with frag. Like, what is the elevator pitch, I guess? Like, you are a spanner, a time traveler, and frag is basically time travel hit points or wounds, for lack of a better, metaphor. And you deal with Continuum, the society that you have time travelers and live in that society, and you fight narcissists, bad time travelers who do bad things, and you have to, and so like that's the game on its most simple level.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it seems like the stakes are the more you learn about the setting, the more you're like, wait, so everything's predestined. There is, according to what you're told by your, Continuum cronies who can travel forward in time and see how everything turns out. They're like, okay, so the universe starts. There's a few other sentient races, but not that many. Life develops on Earth, and there is a time traveler sort of utopia in the past that's okay, but it falls apart because of powerful narcissists in, before recorded history, and they create just this super fucked up world. It's like real Demon Kings shit here, okay? And we are constantly traveling back in time to stop Demon King time incursions. And we win. At some point, the flaws of their psychotic, chaotic, evil ways and extreme selfishness bite them in the ass, and it comes down to there's I think it was 7 or 9 Hell King super time traveler deviants who eventually are eventually defeated, but are still in their past, spanning forward thousands of years to mess with our present and future.
Mm-hmm.
But, what comes to happen is their time passes, we beat them, and we enter recorded human history, which is a necessary chrysalis leading up to the year 4000, which is when humankind becomes a society of all time travelers. We basically evolve into Greys who are traveling back in time to fix the really seriously worst stuff. But they're like, the inheritors don't really like to come back here. They just don't like it. And they exist in a state far, far beyond our own. So don't bug them.
Yeah.
For all your powers as a time traveler, in many ways, you're still sitting at the kids' table.
Yeah.
But they're like, yeah, if we get to the year 4000 without everything being shaken to pieces, we enter this golden era where time and space travel is so easy that humankind floods the entire universe. We colonize the galaxy, not just in the present and future, but backwards in time, so that there are human colonies before human life evolves on Earth, but they don't travel to Earth because they need to keep things in, the crucial central history of Earth has to follow the script to get to Utopia.
Mm-hmm.
And what the narcissists are trying to do is derail the script that leads to the inheritors' utopia. And, who's telling you that this future you're not allowed to visit is perfect? Why, it's the inheritors. But they are very, very adamant about, no, don't upset the apple cart. I know you'd love to prevent the Holocaust, but once you know enough that you could travel back that far on your own, you will have a big enough view that you'll understand the beautiful integrity of history, which must be maintained.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a weird sort of empowerment, disempowerment setup.
Yeah. James, is there anything else you'd like to add to what the game does?
Okay, well, on top of that, you've got all the different factions within the Continuum, all the different groups that you are encouraged to be part of, and it's not quite clear whether these are kind of character class type things or more like the vampire cliques, clubs, whatever the vampire things are. It's
clear to me that I'm like, these are vampire clans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But there's more. I think there's kind of more to it than that, except it's just not clearly defined enough. There's not quite enough space within the book because it's a 230-page book and they're trying to fit everything in there, including the dream time and psionic powers. And it wants to have its cake and eat it and then go back in time so it can eat the cake before the cake was eaten the first time, and that would cause and just everything. There's so many good ideas in here, but it wants to be so much. What they've got is a game line, and they're trying to squeeze it all in the rulebook.
And one way they choose to squeeze this in, warning to my fellow eyeglass wearers, is by printing it in teeny weeny eye strain vision. I mean, this was not a big deal to me when I was 20, but I'm 50 and my eyes aren't what they were. I got the bifocals now.
PDFs are a blessing in this regard because you can blow them up. On the other hand, this is a game that's really hard to navigate on PDF because with a book you can flip backwards and forwards, and you need to all the time to cross-reference and work out what it's talking about. With a PDF, that is so much harder and so much more time-consuming. You can't keep your finger, or it's much harder to keep your finger in where you were before, so you can get back to the bit you were reading. It is harder today to parse and just to comprehend as a book, to get a grip on everything it's doing, than it would have been 20 years ago. And like Greg, I've no idea where I got my copy from. I assume it was Gen Con. We had one in the Hogshead office back in the day. I'm guessing we swapped it for some Hogshead product. Usually at the end of Gen Con, or at least 20 years ago at Gen Con, the traders were just, you'd wander around the other traders after the trade hall finally shut and go, do you want any of this stuff? Because I'm quite interested in what you've got. And they go, oh, yeah, okay, $30 worth of stuff for $30 worth of stuff. That's probably where I got it. And it kind of, I would occasionally pull it down and flip through it and just go, I'm really not getting a handle on this. And this is despite the fact that one of the people credited in it, not one of the primary designers, but an additional material thing is a very old. I keep having connections to these, backer curated things.
The gamer
Liz Holiday, who is credited with extra material, was my first GM when I got to London to go to college in the mid '80s. I think I've talked about breaking the Guinness World Record for Dungeons and Dragons. She was involved in that. She was on the team.
So have David Fuden and Barbara Manui and and is it Chris Adams?
Yeah.
What else have they done? Or did this just burn them out on gaming?
Well, I discovered Etherco is credited with a bunch of releases through to 2003, including the sequel to Continuum, which is Narcissist.
Oh, Narcissist finally came out.
According to RPG Geek, 9 people own it.
Oh my god!
Would you buy an RPG called Narcissist? Not at $30, I wouldn't. Maybe if it was
absolutely would. I 100% would, and I would sit by a pond reading it, just waiting for someone to come up and say something.
Yeah, but anyway, they released a number of supplements for it apparently, and then a game called Chi Chian, the role-playing game, in 2003. 13 people apparently own that. 75 credited, incidentally, with Continuum. And so far as I could see, no further credits for the company, at least from there. I don't know the others. I don't know the designers. I'm sure I must have met them at some point, but like Greg, I'm old these days. I'm older than Greg is, so my mind is weaker.
The old brain, she's in and out.
I'm going to blame Frag. I think my brain is fragged.
That's it. So the core. Let's play. If I ran the zoo, if I was redesigning Continuum, how would I do it? And so I think I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, what are the things that are occupying the most space and providing the least fun? And it has a very granular and elaborate advancement system for your skills. And I'm like, I would make those much simpler. I mean, if you wanted to make it too simple, it would be you would have 2 skills, time travel, and all that other crap. And I think that would be an oversimplification, but as with Night's Black Agents, I think there could be a real benefit to saying, okay, time travel works like this, which is the best way we can think of to use time travel, and everything else works like this, and they don't have to be connected. I do like the idea that, I really need to know how to pilot this plane, but I don't know how to pilot this plane, so I'm just going to span out I'm going to span ahead 6 months, and then spend 6 months intensively learning how to fly that particular model of plane, or however long it takes.
But that's Bill and Ted, dude. That's the end of Bogus Journey,
right?
Where they go ahead at the concert, learn how to play the instruments, come back and play the concert.
Yeah.
Well,
we should. I mean, you finish your thought, Greg. But.
Well, I was going to say it's basically an economy, because you have this thing that's age, and that's how long you've been alive. Fair enough. And you can buy stuff with age. It's like, I'm going to go spend a year learning Kung Fu. And it's like, okay, you've now leveled up your Kung Fu, but you've also advanced your age. And if you are attempting to still hang out with the people who knew you before you started your Kung Fu studies, you're going to have to explain to them why you look a year older after a hard weekend away, and also your forearms are now sinewy. What happened, dude? And so I'm like, a lot of this could work just as a simple marketplace, and your currencies are age and frag. And that, okay, I want to do this particular thing. I'm going to pay for it in frag, and then I'm going to have to, and then the next adventure is going to be me disentangling that frag before I get too much, because frag is punishing. You pick up like 3 or 4 points and you're screwed. 1 point, okay. 2 points, kind of a pain. 3, all right, now you're counting on the other players to carry your ass around, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You can maybe take baby steps at the stuff you're unbelievably good at, but 4 frag, yeah, you're just a mess. And then, by 7 frag, you're basically a poltergeist.
And at 8, you're unplayable.
Yeah,
Unplayable.
at 7, you're a schizophrenic poltergeist.
Yeah. So this is probably a good segue into how the game does what it does. And I do want to give a brief mention to its a basic mechanic, which I thought was interesting, although a bit awkward. The basic mechanic involves rolling the d10 and then subtracting a number from it. And that number is derived from like your attributes and your skill. And the idea is if the final number from that equation, basically 0 or higher, you succeed. And if it's negative, you fail. So basically you want to roll low. So like if your skill is a 6 and you roll a 5, you succeed. But if you rolled an 8, you would fail. And then there are rules for crits, which is like rolling 2 1s in a row, and crit blunders, which are or just blunders, I think it's called, rolling 2 10s in a row.
Oh, and there's a third one where you roll something. If you hit your skill exactly, you roll again, and if you hit your skill exactly again, it succeeds because some time traveler from the future has helped you, which I thought that's a neat bit.
I do. Yeah, that was a neat little, yeah. And in terms of the basic time travel, and then there's combat, and it has a fairly punishing wound system. Your characters aren't super durable. They can be knocked out or killed. You're still human after all. But the time travel mechanic works by basically kind of like age categories for vampires or ranks for werewolves. You have spans, which spanning is not only a verb, it's a noun. It's to your sort of rank. You start at span 1, and like I said, like was mentioned earlier, that means 1 year in time in 1 mile in distance. Miles isn't very like, boy, for a game about time travel societies that exist thousands of years in the future, they settle on the mile, huh? All right. All right.
That's your complaint. That's what you're going to complain about with Continuum.
It's just like it's such a product of a time. It is so heavily influenced by White Wolf, as we mentioned, and I think that just kind of like I just thought that was fun. But you basically a full Nights of Rest will restore that allotment. But when you get to rank 2, it goes up by factors of 10. So like at span 2, you get to go up to 10 years in a single rest or 10 miles. And basically the advancement mechanics are interesting, although just kind of like really
let's read the part that's going to make everyone say that's the motherfucking deal breaker, because I bet you are thinking the same thing I'm thinking.
Oh, it's 100% that. Like
let me find it.
It's page 59, earning span.
Well, it's on a number of pages, because every time because all the leveling up stuff is not in one place. But yeah, page 59. And earning span 2, your frag must be 0. Every time it's been established that you meet a future self already, you must have fulfilled meeting that future self.
Gemini incidents.
Can't have traveled.
The horoscope stuff, the astrology stuff. Oh, made my teeth hurt.
What?
Carry on.
Yeah.
Let's see. You have to have had a year of age. The player, brace yourselves. If you're not sitting down, you might want to grab a chair. The player, not his or her characters, must have spent 2 months of real time and played at least 3 game sessions of at least 4 hours apiece playing Continuum before advancement can even be considered. And I'm like, wow, well, okay, you guys know what you want. This is not going to be a game of one-offs, is it?
Mm-mm.
And in many ways, I think that's
Actually, that
intentional.
wasn't what I was thinking of.
Oh, well, what were you thinking of? Because I'm like, that's the deal breaker. You know, people
No.
aren't going to be like, I'm not going to commit to.
It's a heck of a statement of intent for the structure of the game. It's saying you will play this the way we have designed this, and we want you to, we want you to start get master the skills at the low level, and then we'll take the training wheels off, and then we'll give you a decent bike, and then finally we'll put a motor on it.
That actually, I mean, that was a bit like eye rolling, but the one that really caught me. So there's two more requirements. One is traveling each year of the decade in which you first banned. I guess that's 5 years in the past, 5 years in the future. I don't know.
Sure.
They don't really specify that, but. Here's it. B, reciting the maxims by heart, which the player must be able to do. You have a Boy Scout oath, basically, which is on the frontispiece, the very first page of the book, which are 5 maxims. It's a page of text, and you have to recite this as a person, that was the eye rolling thing. It's like, really? You have to, oh my, it's so, I don't know. It's like...
Every so often in RPGs, you hit something that's a little bit cult-like, that's just a little bit not quite sure about that. And I think I mentioned the guy. Is it called Time Ship? I should look this up. In my world, I've never looked this up. It's ancient. It's kind of late 70s, early 80s, but it's one where you basically create a ritual circle and you light a candle before you start playing, and this is not the game where you play for as long as the candle and then you're all dead. It's very ritualistic, and this was one of those moments. You read that, it's like, you want me to actually memorize entire chunks of text. The last time I had to do that was, I would think I was 10 years old. I had to memorize the catechism before I was confirmed. It's that kind of level. It's quite odd.
I had to memorize the major muscle groups before I could promote to black belt, and the only one I remember is the sternocleidomastoid. And do you know why I remember the sternocleidomastoid? Because I saw that on the list. I'm like, I'm never going to remember what the fuck a sternocleidomastoid is. And it has been embedded in my brain ever since, because irony.
That's the way brains work. They're against you.
My brain hates me, but I got even.
Yeah. So the basic skill resolution system is fine. Like I said, awkward.
I think you could probably... Could you keep this with the math is exactly the same, but it's just easier to do because you don't have to subtract a number from another number? I'm like, you probably could. So...
There's a bunch of stuff about advancing. There's a lot of pages about advancing up to span 5, which... By the time you're span 5, you're traveling thousands of years around, and it's just
this is a part where I'm like, this could be fucking genius, which is that you could set this up. If I was rewriting this, what I would spend a lot of time and effort and attention on is this is a game that reinvents itself every time you level. That when you become a spanner, it's like, okay, we are going to do our Bill and Ted 1 year. I get all these do-overs, but I have to pay for all these do-overs. And it's, kind of this little low end. You could almost have it be a domestic sitcom feeling sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then when you get to, okay, we're traveling 10 years at a jump, it's like, all right, now you are dealing with more serious stuff. It becomes this interpersonal game, because now you're expected to be making yourself useful to the people in your fraternity, which is like a vampire clan, let's be real. You are expected to be contributing to society and not just running around being a span 1. And then once you're at 3, you're supposed to be running things. And once you're at 4, you're supposed to be really involved in all this espionage stuff against the, narcissist Hell Kings. And then at 5, it's like, yeah, you're leading incursions into, narcissist hell space to fight them back. And you know that your side wins, but nothing's for sure when you're in ante desideratum time, which is the perverted realm of the twisted narcissists, because you don't know what happens in there. That's their time, and they're constantly messing with it. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, a game where every time you level up, it reinvents itself.
Yeah.
Sounds cool, although the problem you run into is that, people sign up to play one game and they're like, oh, I like it like this, and it's going to change 4 times. Great. Sounds swell.
A couple of other notes. One, there is a rule at Span 1 that you're supposed to stay in level society, which is non-time traveling society. So you're supposed to keep your day job. So they call it like the Clark Kent thing, like they reference. So even though you have these superpowers, you're supposed to not quit your life. But when you get to Span 2, you give that up, fake your death, and move on as a full-time. Yeah, and there is a rule that all time travelers basically have to be pulled from level society. Like they time travelers cannot have a child, so that otherwise the universe would fill up with time travelers.
I think the argument there is, I remember this bit because it creeped me out, because it's in the section where I'm like, this feels like eugenics. This reads a little bit like eugenics. Mm-hmm. And it's okay, so if 2 non-time travelers do it, their kid will not be a time traveler. And if a time traveler and a regular person do it, their kid will be a non-time traveler. But if 2 time travelers go at it, they're going to have a time traveling kid, and you really don't want, the terrible twos are bad enough when your kid can't create frag and paradox. Mm-hmm. So they're like, we're only elevating people. We're promoting the chosen few to being time travelers.
Yeah. And you're basically chosen at random. Like if you accidentally see something, then they'll either hypnotize you, make you forget, or let you in on the secret, depending on
on how you react.
Yeah, there's a whole thing about the invitation, which is kind of a lot like, hey, let's role play how your character got turned into a vampire.
It's a little bit. Well, I mean, hey, if it's broke, why fix it? And in 1999, what looked like it worked really well was the White Wolf games.
Yeah. But the in terms of how the game does things, there is no more important aspect than time combat, and that is the system that really when they talk about Continuum, they're talking about time combat, because the whole idea is you're basically fighting other time travelers to cause either one, literally figure out where and when they are so you can physically go there, ambush them, and knock them out or kill them, or cause enough paradox that they are erased, or
that they frag out.
Yeah, that they frag out.
Yes, because you can cause frag to other people.
Right. And this is done. And so if you're an author and you're writing a story about time travel, well, that's one thing to do. But when there's other people who make choices you don't anticipate, well, that's why they have time combat.
Let me jump in here, because this is one of the things about the way the game is presented and presents its information. Greg's had his bit about what he would change. What I would change is I would take out all the fiction, because there is a lot of fiction in this book, and an awful lot of it is people talking to each other to explain concepts. And it's not terribly good. I would take it out and I would replace it with examples of play to actually show how these rules work with these ideas.
They do have an example of time combat, which I did read.
Well, sort of. There's a short story alongside a very truncated description of what is happening in the game at that particular moment. But it's not what I would think of as a proper example of play, because it doesn't go, how are the players making this decision? How are they interacting with the GM? I've talked about examples of play before. I think they're really where you convey the flavor of how the game works in play, which is a really difficult thing to convey, or was in 1999, in the days before YouTube.
Right.
You can't, unless you're sitting players down to an actual demo at an actual convention, as I can't remember who it was that said it. It could have been Matt Leacock. You can't put yourself in the box. You can't put the games designer in the box. We don't fit. We're big, most of us. you need to show them how to play. And the one thing that I really regret about Continuum is it never does that. It never does an example of play. I think I can logically kind of see how time combat would work, but I want them to show me, and they don't.
You're one up on me, man. I'm baffled. It's like, okay, you're going to go back and it's like mostly time combat is about angling around, and then you punch the guy in the back of the head and cut his throat while he's unconscious. Or you angle around, and because you've angled around so much, he's now finding out that, he is his own roommate and grandfather, and he just, vanishes in a cloud of paradox. And so, yeah, I feel that this could be codified better. I don't know. I didn't get it. Maybe if I had tried harder, I would get it. But when I'm trying to figure out how to do something for fun, I don't want it to be as hard as time combat is.
I didn't get it exactly, but I felt it was gettable. But they don't make it easy. There's a little paragraph here. The process of bringing down a narcissist is like breathing deeply and slowly, like listening to your heartbeat. Most time combats involve a cycle of oracle/attack, rendezvous, oracle/attack, rendezvous. And that's just half. Explain. That's
a hell of a language you got yourself there, pal.
Yeah. Now I've lived in a similar space because I spent a lot of the early 90s working on a role-playing game that never came out called Bugtown, set in Matt Howarth's comics, Those Annoying Post Brothers and Savage Henry, in which characters aren't time travelers, but they can shift at will between parallel universes. They don't need devices to do it. They just think about it and bang, they're in a parallel universe. It's like a punk version of Zelazny's Amber with many bigger guns. And it's fun and hyper violent and stuff. And I've kind of confronted how does combat work if you can just shift out to another reality, come back 50 feet tall with a bazooka to match, and this stuff is doable. But my system was much more elastic and freeform and verbal. This is much more. I admire what they've done with it. This idea of each phase sweeps through time. You go back to who's earliest in time. What do they do? Next person along the time stream. What do they do? And you have a minute. You are given a very fixed minute when you're the player to come up with what you do. It's clever. I feel it's been play tested. I'm not sure it's been play tested with people outside their group enough. But it feels like it's like so much of this book. It just needs another draft. The whole thing needs another draft to just explain itself better.
I think it needs. To go from being a 1999 book to being a 2021 book, it needs more than one more draft. I think it needs to be taken down to studs and rebuilt. But like these home shows, it's like, oh no, it's got good bones. And I feel like the good bones are, we are going to take this time travel super seriously. Frag is an economy. Your age is an economy. The idea that the game reinvents itself every time you add another zero to how far you can travel probably makes it something that's probably going to be a deal breaker for people, but that people like me who like it would absolutely love that. What else do I think absolutely needs to be kept is probably the yet. Oh yeah, I forgot to make.
I would like to talk a little bit about
go Ross.
Time combat.
Your turn.
So the basic of it is the GM calls for spanning cards, and so you have to keep note cards essentially.
There's so much bookkeeping.
There's so much. So that's the thing. You're trying to role play and plan out causality through time travel. In a tabletop game is the core of it. And the problem is that You see, the way I picture it is that I tried to run this is that we would get a little like one or two sweeps in, which are sweeps are basically like turns, more or less, and with a declaration and then execution. But then we'd make a mistake. We'd forget about one part of causality, and then like we'd have to reset. I don't know. Like there's no mechanics for like, oh, did you forget that this happened? There's also a lot of abstract. So basically, in each sweep, every time travel combatant has to declare what they do and then do it. And they're basically all that's allowed. All you're allowed to do are stratagems. And there's basically, so if you think about it in a broad sense, maybe helping maybe like Battleship. You're basically, if you picture time as a grid and like you're trying to figure out where and when your opponent is, and you could spend your action to find out where they are, to ping them and
or
then
who
make
they
attacks.
are.
Yeah, or who they are. So the example basically has the player characters ambushed as one bad guy goes back in time. The game, the player characters are in 1975. One bad guy goes back in 1947 to steal a gold necklace, to buy a gold necklace that one of the player characters, grandmother had. And so now that causes a paradox because, the player character inherited that, but now it's been, stolen or,
it's been time forked. It's been existing in two places at the same time. It's
right.
Frag. It's oozing frag.
And then the other bad guy. So it's 2-on-2. The other bad guy goes and sabotages a film that the other player character watches. So the player character doesn't see the movie that he's already seen, essentially. And it sort of proceeds from there. Now the player characters. So what I don't get is like how the player characters figure things out.
It says when you get fragged because you can sense your own.
You know that you get fragged, but you don't know. You don't really know details about the fragging, and so the player characters have to spend what they call oracle actions in order to ascertain this. Now, one of them has a dreaming skill, which is basically magic. I can just dream and learn what my opponent's doing, which the player does. She's like, aha, I dream my opponent's going to plant some false information, a cobweb stratagem, and he is defenseless against dreaming, so I can do that. It's like, okay, well, that makes sense. The other player character is like, well, I'm going to oracle this my opponent, and he just makes a library science check, essentially. I'm looking at page 131, and he just knows that he's there at that time. Like, how does that work?
How did you find that out,
how
buddy?
did you get that? Like, what? Do you have special? Do you have like Biff's, sports almanac, but for time travelers that you read up on? Like, is there something I'm missing?
Well, yeah. I mean, the way you hand wave that is the scribe fraternity in the setting is the people who are in charge of knowing everything, and so you would go and so if you're in the middle of time combat, you're like. You go to the scribes, you're like, dudes, help me out. I'm being fragged, but I don't know how. And they're like, okay, well, we will help you figure this out. But then later, you're going to have to come and, pay it off somehow. And it's like, okay, well, what'll I have to do? Don't worry about it. We already know what you're going to have to do.
Right. So, like, that's the thing. In order to make this workable, it's not really... The only way I could see this working as a game is to essentially make it not a game. Like the GM just has to plot everything out and give players very, very limited options in order to preserve causality, especially with all the backdrop settings. So that's where I was lost in the play example.
Yeah. What this makes me think is that, okay, and one of the things that pretty much comes out and says in the GM section is if you realize you've made an error and you have this continuity hiccup, congratulations, you've discovered your next session's plot is, oh, hey guys, you've scratched the timeline, you got to buff that out and put a little carpenter's paste in there to make it all smooth again. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, is this a game that's much easier to play if you're kind of dumb and don't pick up on the hiccups in your causality?
Well, it's also
that
kind
if
of like,
nobody notices, it's no big deal.
it seems that the point of Continuum is that the point of time travel technology is to undo the damage of time travel technology.
That is the best thing I've
It is
heard
notable that one of the first main examples of just time traveling and creating frag and then sorting it out involves taking the wrong can of beer out of the fridge or taking it out of the fridge at the wrong moment. And from this tiny incident, not a major incident unfurls, but it requires some explanation of how you sort this thing out. It does feel like if I was a time traveler within this universe, I wouldn't go anywhere because I know it's just going to create problems.
Yeah. I would do the absolute minimum amount of time travel required to get up. Like the one thing they do mention is also the society eventually, once you get to span 3, you get to go far enough in the future that you get like your health is medically improved to the point where you live hundreds or possibly 1,000 years. So, and be cured of all diseases. So,
which is pretty sweet.
Yeah. Work your way up so you can, live for centuries.
Climb the ladder or die. These are both valid choices.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the whole thing is like it very much is a White Wolf game because it's you're basically a intern in a multi-level marketing pyramid scheme, and you just have to do what your elders tell you or die horribly. And
the elders
text.
Yeah.
And the elders may be your future self.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are. I don't know. I don't know how I'd fix it. I don't know how I'd change it. I keep thinking about the line, possibly the best single line from Futurama is the line, "Oh, good, a lesson about not changing the past from Mr. I am my own grandfather."
Yeah, the art is really interesting because there isn't actually very much of it, and they've got these. There's a long list of artists, and the standout is, as you say, Tony DiTerlizzi, who was ex-TSR, I'm pretty sure at this point, and would have been working on the thing that made his name, which was the Spiderwick Chronicles. He's the Spiderwick Chronicles guy. So he would not have been cheap. And Raven Mimura, who I was just mentioning, was coming into his prime. And a couple of the pieces in the book, there is a lovely, lovely piece. I'm just looking at page 36, which I hadn't initially clocked as him because I'm working off a PDF which is comprised entirely of scans of the original book. We should say it's very hard to get copies of this these days because this is not an official PDF. There is, so far as I know, no official PDF. It's not available on DriveThru or anywhere else I could find. You can pick it up secondhand on Amazon if you've got $200 spare. It's almost disappeared. Which
oddly, the website is still up.
The website is still up and claims that things are still a going concern. Whether they just prepaid the domain name for a long, long time and the hosting, I don't know. But it is a curious artifact. So you're going to have to, unless you've got a copy already, you're probably going to have to take our word on an awful lot of this stuff.
I'm looking at page 55, artwork by David Fuden, and wondering if the model for that was not my late friend Thomas Manning, because it looks an awful lot like him. And I know that artists often use other artists as models. Thomas was the art director for the first edition of Unknown Armies and did the cover and was also a close friend of mine. So
the piece is called Farewell to a Friend.
Yeah, coming across that unprepared was kind of a thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It looks like a portrait. It doesn't look like just a piece. It looks like it's very much based on a photograph or someone known to the artist. Wow. And that's immediately opposite, or the next page is the one with all the different diagrams of the way that the temporal universe can work. Which again there's a lot of brain hurty stuff in this. There's an awful lot of trying to explain stuff. Illustration D1, sentient space-time. Oh God, no! Please, it's past
Well,
midnight. And then there's the one where you've actually got to cut parts out of the book and fold them back on themselves to understand the shape of the universe that they're trying to describe.
Oh yeah, that.
And there's a part of me that's like, just don't put a quarter in the jukebox if this isn't the song you want to hear. You signed up for time travel. Mm-hmm. Don't complain that you just got a fistful of time travel.
There's so many good ideas in here, but they just never quite gel. There were times as I was reading it, I was feeling actually what this is the Bible for a really, really interesting series of time travel based science fiction novels, which expand the universe. And book 1 is span 1 and book 2 is span 2.
Yes,
that would have been amazing, and I would have been completely into that.
Yeah.
But as a role-playing game, you want to be told this story. You don't necessarily... Reading the book, I'm not convinced I want to be part of it.
You can't be a part of it. It is that's the whole point, is that you cannot... Like, the only way I could see running it is that the GM basically puts it on the tightest of rails. Like, it would be the most... It is like...
Which is completely in keeping with the idea that the Continuum is, we won in the future, and all we are doing right now is ensuring that the procession of events that leads to our victory doesn't get derailed, which it doesn't, because we we won in the future.
Like, you would have to pre-plot it. It would have to be like the comparison would be like a one of those full motion videos, sort of video games where everything is done with live actors, and so you get to choose between going left and going right, or like, talk to this person or shoot them, like very, very binary choices. That's the only, so there could be multiple endings, but it would just be a flow chart. Like, if the players do this, then we go down this path, and then and follow that. And you cannot, like, you can't just let them freely time travel, because if they go off the rails, you just like, oh shit, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen, and I can't have that because it's all predetermined.
It's like, wow, now I have to spend $30 on the next book called Narcissist to find out what happens when they go rogue.
Honestly, I don't think Narcissist was ever made. I think there is another book that called Further Information, a GM's Treasury of Time. Which does look like it was printed. There is a copy on eBay for $175. But I don't think, and the Continuum website lists it as an available product, along with the Span book, Time Travel Diary Software.
Oh God! Well, I mean, so much of this we haven't even gotten into the yet. And I didn't even make my dumb joke about, I bought this book thinking that we were going to be playing Yetis. But the subtitle is Role-Playing in the Yet. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that the Yet is the future that you come to know before it comes to pass, which you are obligated to fulfill. And so the Yet is like the world's strictest to-do list, right? Mm-hmm. It's every time you have a Gemini event where you meet your future self, it's like, that goes in your Yet. Okay, I know that at some point I'm going to travel back in time to this juncture in 1984 and meet my younger self, smack him upside the head and say, hey, dummy, she ain't no good for you. That's because that's part of the system that eventually leads to utopia. Mm-hmm. But all the cool time travel stuff, all the Bill and Ted hijinks involve putting stuff in your Yet, or you suck up frag until you have paid off your Yet debt. And so it does become a game of accounting and debt fulfillment.
I think I didn't mention what I would do to recreate this. The thing, obviously, I would say, my obvious thing would be to remove most of the setting information. Because makes it, like I said, unplayable if the future, if you know what the future is, if you spell it out, even to just to the GM, because instead I would really I would like the idea of spanning, like having, you can only do so much time travel before you can rest. So like you have, that's like your ammo for time combat. So I would focus it like you get maybe make it a toolkit game like Knights Black Agents, where you can come up with your own theory of why the player characters can now time travel. Keep it inherent so you don't have to deal with plots about stolen time machines and that kind of nonsense. But it would be very focused, time traveling like days or weeks. And so it would be trying to recreate the kind of time travel movies you see in things like Primer, and Time Crime, and loops where it's like one day, but there's 12 of you running around and you're trying to figure it out. That and I don't even know if that's possible, but I feel like that's getting to the heart of time travel and would be something that could be like, an engaging puzzle / fight / struggle of intricacy. So like I would focus just on the time combat and remove everything else. Make it a 300-page book about time combat and over the span of like a week. Very, very short-term time travel where you're going back and forth in time in short periods.
So none of this. I'm going to travel back in time and punch his dad in the balls so he's never conceived.
Well, I mean, you could do that, but like by keeping it focused on a week, I feel like it would be more playable. Like if you're jumping, because one thing, it's like if you jump back 20 years in a person's timeline and affect one of their relatives in such a way that you get fragged, like there's outside of having a magic dreaming skill or some psychic ability or another, the GM just Deus Ex Machina as a time traveler to tell you there's no way for you to find that out. There's no way for you to find out what's causing paradox. But if it's like a week and you can retrace your own steps over a week, so I would have more like,
you could get super weird bubbly in it. There was a book called it was one of the stainless steel rat books from Harry Harrison that I read in like the 80s, and it had this time travel plot where he is he has to travel back in time and fight this evil dickbag time traveler, and every time he's almost got the evil dickbag time traveler beat, the guy jumps into his time machine and escapes. And so, he comes close to getting him once, and then he comes close to getting him twice. He comes close to getting him, but he's in this really bad spot when he receives a message from his future self telling him exactly what to do to escape. He escapes. The evil dickbag escapes again. And he realizes, wait, okay, so thing one, the evil dickbag just escaped back to the point before I attacked him the first time. Evil dickbag was never born. He only exists in 3 times. 1, right before I beat him the first time. 2, right before I beat him the second time. 3, right before I beat him the third time. He's in an endless loop going around between these 3 things, constantly futilely repeating the same actions over and over. 2, the information about this similarly came from nowhere, because this message that my future self gave to my present self, gave to my past self, I'm now as my present, giving to my my past self, having become the future self, and I never learned the information except from it being there. It is spontaneously generated. So if you could, if you're willing to wave that hand, it can be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna suck up a bunch of frag in order to have a future self tell me information that they only learn because my future self I'm going to be passes on this note that was spontaneously generated.
This is The Stainless Steel Rat Saves the World. Harry Harrison, 1972, SF fans.
Yeah, okay.
I used to love The Stainless Steel Rat so much. I reread some of it a couple of years ago. It has not aged terribly well. It's not awful. It's still just about readable, but it's not the joyride it was when I was 13.
Yeah, well, what is the joyride that things were when you were 13?
No comment.
Yeah, that sounded better in my head than in my mouth. I
like the setting. Yeah, but I mean, I do like the setting a lot of like how they imagine what a time travel society would be like, but like it's neat. But how would I use it unless you write an adventure where the players were just in one of these Atlantis, or
one of the fictional times.
Yeah, one of the fictional times.
They do address the question of, okay, how do you deal with time travel? And this was pre-Wikipedia, when you just couldn't say, okay, well, what was 5th century Abyssinia like? Mm-hmm. And they give you a few tools as a GM to deal with your players just getting a wild hair and saying, okay, I'm off to 3rd century South America, which none of us knows anything about. And so, one of these is, okay, well, you can't speak the language, but, every time and place has its little cadres of time travelers who sort of oversee it. So when you show up there, if you want to translate, you can just go to these other time travelers and, maybe, but, then you'll be indebted to them and you'll have to do something for them. And now we have a quest. But, also then, you have a character who's native to the time, whose job it is pretty much is to explain things to you and be the translator. And that also, the other thing they talk about is like, yeah, look, most of what we know about the past is what did people eat and what did they put the things they ate in? And, vast, vast swaths of history are just, whoa. If you look at Egyptian history, there are legitimate Egyptologists who are like, oh yeah, I think the timeline is actually a couple thousand years longer than we think. There's just a giant chunk where we don't have anything. Mm-hmm. And so, that there's a lot of, well, yeah, you can make stuff up because we're looking at history through just the pinholes left by whatever random crap managed to make it through. And the closer, the more recent a piece of history is, the bigger the hole you're looking through, until it's, oh, well, we get to the stuff I actually lived through and feels natural. But, so it's like, yeah, if they're super ignorant, mm-hmm. then just make up something that sounds right. And they find in the present something that disagrees, you can either say, well, guess you know better than the historians because you were there. And historians we're reconstructing things from ancient parchments and pottery shards, or else, oh shit, it's different. What the historians are saying is different from what you experienced. I guess you better figure out what's wrong with the timeline, because that's on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, we get back to your comment of your primary job as a time traveler is to repair the damage done by time travel.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
That is just that got me, Ross.
If that had been if that had been the mission statement on the back of the book, I would have been in like Flynn. I'd have just, I'm there. I want to play this. That sounds like a hoot. Paranoia with time travel.
Then it would have to be a comedy game.
Well, I think a game has done that. The Time Watch RPG from Pelgrane Press. You are people who defend the timeline.
Wait, that's Pelgrane? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a Gumshoe system. And which Gumshoe, I think, fits well with time travel.
Okay.
Yeah. Instead of preparedness, it's your time score, you're like, oh, you just fixed your Gemini score, essentially. Yeah. So I've not read Time Watch, but I would definitely be interested in checking that out at some point. But, yeah.
It's Kevin Culp, isn't it? He does good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kevin Culp. But yeah, they're like, special agents fighting, not like I would picture Continuum as like you're just a gig economy, or you're just in the time office like, I gotta fix 5 paradoxes before yesterday. Hold my calls. Yeah. So, because that does seem to be the core. The game is like all right, you're time travelers. Okay, now you broke it. Now the rest of the campaign is fixing that. So yeah.
There was I mean, and there's fun stuff you can do with the idea of time travel. This was what, if I had been a writer in the writer's room for Loki, the part at the end where he meets the guy who's, in charge of all time, I would have had that guy be, and I think when they showed up, wasn't he actually eating an apple?
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Maybe I'm just remembering how I wanted it to be, but, them commenting on his snack and him saying, oh yeah, this is the best apple in all of time. Chomp. Or at least the best one I've found. I've tested, I've had thousands of selves test tens of thousands of apples. This one is from an orchard in France in the year 1987. They just had the perfect terroir and the best, the best weather for getting it, and it was picked exactly on October 9th at 12:59 p.m. This is the best one.
Well, then, you can't, but then you can't pick it because then other time travels would pick it. So, you can't. There's only one of those apples. So
unless you allow for time folding of objects.
Yeah.
No, you can diddle around with time and you can have as many as you want. You just send it back and keep laundering it. But this is not what Continuum does.
No. No. James, have we talked about what you would do with a game?
I don't know. I think it's kind of what it is. It's a moment in time, a moment in development. I have this theory. That it's not a role-playing game. It's a prog rock concept album from 1977, and the closest one, which is not actually a concept album, but it gets close, is Hawkwind's Quark, Strangeness and Charm, which is an album I love. It's an album. It's completely bonkers. It has comedy tracks in it. It has tracks explicitly based on well-known works of science fiction, including Damnation Alley and The Iron Dream, which is based on the Norman Spinrad book, The Iron Dream, which, I don't know if you know it, it's the one in which it's a parallel universe in which a young Adolf Hitler comes out of World War I, decides that this war thing really isn't for him, immigrates to America, where he becomes a well-known science fiction author. And The Iron Dream is his Nebula Award-winning or Hugo Award-winning masterwork. And it's oh my God, it is the darkest, blackest comedy. It's a brilliant work. Hawkwind in 1977 did a 2-minute track about it on their album Quark Strangers. So it's full of ideas, but it never gels. And it is what it is. But it comes out in the middle of 1977 with no idea that in just a very few... Punk is already happening. Never Mind the Bollocks is about to come out and destroy its entire ecosystem and the world in which... the comfortable world of music in which albums like that could come out and succeed. Not only punk, but also a couple of years down the line further on, cheap synthesizers or cheaper synthesizers or drum machines, completely changing the face of music. And that's what was going on in 1999, because the story game movement was building at one end, changing the way that a lot of people thought about games and the way that games told stories. And at the same time, at the other end of the scale, you've got the OGL, which is about to explode the market into D20 material that gluts the market and makes the ecosystem impossible for feisty small publishers trying to get away with 2,000 or 3,000 copies. It used to be, even at the end of the 90s, you could sell pretty much 2,000, 3,000 copies of a new RPG if you weren't an idiot. If you did things the right way and you promoted it to distributors in the right way, you didn't need a lot of money to sell about 3,000 copies. And the OGL came along and that number halved. And that's not a viable print run, suddenly. At that point, before digital printing, before print on demand, before short run stuff was really viable, it was really hard. And a lot of smaller publishers found it impossible to compete. It was one of the reasons that I closed Hogshead at the end of 2002, because Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay was still selling in very decent quantities, and Nobilis had come. And there's an overlap between what Continuum is trying to do and I think what Nobilis actually did That kind of very grandiose, here is an entire multiverse for you to inhabit, and the concepts are big, and it's for people to get their head around. I said in a fairly famous Usenet post that I felt Nobilis was going to be too much role-playing game for a lot of players out there, and people went, "Oh, what are you talking about? I've been playing D&D since the 70s. There's no role-playing." And then they read it. It was like, "No, I have no idea how to run this game. Maybe you were right." No, they didn't say maybe you're right. They said, "No, I have no idea how to run this game. Therefore, it is a bad game." Not, "Therefore, James Wallace was right to tell me not to buy it." That's role players, or many role players. So I think that's what it is. I wouldn't change it. I think it is what it is. And I think that for a very small number of people out there, it is probably a game that they would absolutely dearly love, exploring this really quite rigid system of the way you have to interact within the time stream and what you can do and what you can't do and how you do it. And if you can get your head around time combat, then, and I think there is an enjoyable system. Then you've got it. Then you've got it. And I think if you can find a crew of people who can play that with you, then this is quite possibly your ideal game. Those people may be out there. They may still be playing it. I don't know. I don't know how we'd contact them. I don't know if we could ever bring them back. They may have gone too far.
Only through the Dreamlands can they be reached. Yeah, if you can master time combat, I'm like, that's an if so tall that it bestrides the world like Colossus. Its shadow eclipses cities. It's a big if.
Like, it's times like this that I appreciate RPG.net for being around so long and preserving so much, because there are reviews of it dating to when its release in 1999. Let's see, there are reviews that were posted there. There are message board posts that are from 2011, 2014, 2016, 2016, making Continuum playable, 2011, making sense of narcissists, Continuum, working through the knots, 2014. Like, people have been butting their heads against this for literal decades now. And I think this is just like, I think if you understand time combat, you really have it, because like it's not,
that is the hurdle.
Yeah, that is the hurdle that we'll be talking about, I think, as long as there will be discussions of role-playing games on the internet.
You must be this abstract to ride this ride.
You just, if you think you get it, you really haven't. That's the paradox of Continuum. I appreciate that these authors did make this game, that we have the singular example of a game that may have gone, maybe this is, if your game is getting to be like Continuum, maybe you have gone too far. Maybe you should pull it back and make it a little more grounded. As the, like, we tried time travel in RPGs and look at it. There it is, Continuum.
Well, the thing I keep thinking of is, and I can't even remember who initially made this observation, but that it's like, once you put any time travel into X is now about time travel. And this is what we're going to see with the MCU. The MCU is now going to be about time travel. And the best stuff about time travel, like Doctor Who, I don't think Doctor Who makes much sense or cares to make much sense, but it's like, it's about time travel, and that's the core of it. And so having, a random superhero game with time travel in it, as soon as you put that in, it's like, well, why don't you just fix it with time travel? Why don't you just fix it with time travel? Why don't you just fix it with time travel? And even when you can't fix it with time travel, a large part of your narrative energy is going to be spent explaining why you can't fix it with time travel. It's the same thing with how telepathy, if you allow telepathy in your games, okay, you can allow telepathy in your games, but kiss every mystery plot goodbye, unless you're willing to lay a bunch of groundwork about, oh, here's why you can't just cut that Gordian knot with your telepathy and read the mind and find the criminal.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's an interesting experiment, an artifact of RPG history. Certainly, if it's a topic, if you're interested in time travel as a game designer, you should definitely borrow or find a copy to read, or at least read some of the reviews of it, because it'll forever be on my shelf. And I wonder the next time I have friends like, oh man, we bring it up in conversation. Oh, can I borrow that? I love to run it. I just want to see how many more will be claimed by Continuum
soon. You just keep hoping for the chosen one.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's maybe one day.
Someday my prince will come and he will understand how to run time combat.
Yeah, well,
if there is anyone listening out there who has successfully run Continuum with time combat in it, we would love to hear from you. At least I would. I can't speak for the others, but I would love to know how it went. Does it work? Because as I say, I think it does. I'm just my tiny brain is not enough to the margin of my brain is not enough to contain it. No. But it feels like the system's workable, and it feels like that it has worked for people, or they wouldn't have written it like that.
I mean, it's like the Everway problem, which was, Everway's a great game if you can find a John Tynes to run it for you.
Mm-hmm. Tweet.
Or Jonathan Tweet.
Well, I'm sure Tynes runs a main game of Everway, but it's probably not the one Tweet intended it to be.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, to me, running Everway always made sense. I'm like, this is easy and frictionless, but that's just because apparently I have Everway brain, and Everway brain seems to be very different from Continuum brain. So somewhere out there might be that savant that Boz was looking for, who's like, what? Continuum's a snap. Everything makes sense. It's a beautiful, multifaceted gem of perfect understanding, and we're just 3 filthy apes in a zoo sitting in our cage, can't figure it out.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for listening. Thanks again to Christian Bickley for curating this episode.
Yes.
I'm glad I got a chance to talk about Continuum after all these years of it sitting on my shelves and taunting me.
Sitting on your shelf.
Sitting on my shelf. Next episode.
That's a tongue twister.
That is. Next episode, we're going to be talking about a game that handles a complex topic. I think I've not finished reading it, but from quite well. This is a very different change of pace. Bluebeard's Bride.
Yes.
And so that it is a beautiful role-playing game, but that is will be episode 5. That is what the survey chose, so we will be preparing that next. But again, thank you all for supporting our Kickstarter. And is there anything, Greg?
I'm waiting for you to say thank you, Greg, for comparing me to an ape in a zoo. I think I may be waiting a while.
We're all apes in the zoo of time. So thanks for listening. Yeah. We'll talk to you all next time.
Yep. Bye.